I'm hungry. Not yet.
I know. Right.
Go get Dad's medicine.
I need another. Or do you hear, Daddy, 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 Daddy?
Yes.
It's like,
yes.
Oh my gosh.
Please. But I'm glad to be here today. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's great to have you. He has been complaining the whole time. A moment ago, he relived one of the big Pete Hegseth controversies, saying there are no mountains in New Jersey. We know there are. He brought that up again. I don't know why.
Steve was talking about squalls that came through New Jersey yesterday,
Right.
and he's like, "What's a squall?" And I said, "A squall is to a big storm like mountains in New Jersey are to real mountains.
Right.
It's
right.
just a little guy."
Because
Hey,
Carly,
we have
from New
mountains
Jersey.
in New Jersey where Pete lives, right?
I grew up on a mountain.
Now you're a mountain
Schooley's
woman?
Mountain.
It's called what?
Schooley's Mountain.
And how tall is it? It's like a hill, right?
That's it. That's details.
It's
Okay.
like
Semantics.
It's like
technically a
1,050
mountain.
feet, which puts it 50 feet over the technical threshold of being a mountain.
Is this your
Carly
phone ringing?
Shimkus,
Is
the
someone
mountain
calling you?
woman. I think it might be President Trump telling me he got a hole in one.
He did. His seventh
Which he
time.
did, by the way.
He did. His seventh time.
Very cool.
Thank you.
He's a good golfer.
Thank you, fact checker.
Thank you, Carly.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk about the current president. This morning, Joe Biden making no apologies after a series of off-script remarks on the world stage in Europe over the weekend, even insisting that Russia's Vladimir Putin cannot stay in power, insinuating there should be a regime change.
This, all despite that his team has desperately been in damage control trying to walk back everything that he says.
Yeah, the man asking the questions we all want answers to. Peter Doocy live outside the White House after pressing Joe Biden. Hey, Peter.
Good morning. And the president says he's not walking anything back. But for days, officials that work for him have been. And so I brought some direct quotes from the overseas trip to the president.
What's getting walked back?
It made it sound like, just in the last couple days, it sounded like you told U.S. troops they were going to Ukraine. It sounded like you said it was possible the U.S. would use a chemical weapon, and it sounded like you were calling for regime change in Russia, and we know
None of the three occurred.
none of the three occurred.
None of the three.
And the president gave us a peek at how he prepped. Look at this on the little card, some close to near quotes of what he eventually said, like, I was expressing the moral outrage I felt towards the actions of this man, and I was not articulating a change in policy. Right there on the card. The bit about Putin not remaining in power still has the Kremlin saying this. This is a statement that is certainly alarming. We will continue to track the statements of the U.S. president in the most attentive way. And Republicans here, now that the president is back in the States, are claiming that the president should be the one who's more attentive.
Watching the cascade of blunders from Biden. Every time he explains one thing, it gets worse and worse and worse. It is incredibly dangerous, this kind of presidential weakness.
And I also followed up with the president about what exactly he meant when he said the U.S. would respond to a Russian chemical weapons attack in kind. And he told me that to ask that, I've got to be silly. Back to you.
So, Peter, here's a silly question. When Joe Biden announces a big program, in the back of the room you're at, there's a great big teleprompter that he can read. But then when he answers questions of the press, in particular, since he was cleanup on aisle 1 yesterday, he's got a little cheat sheet that has the answers he's supposed to respond to, right?
And that is, he's got a whole comms staff and national security staff, and this is an issue where they want to make sure that his wording is exactly right. And so that is what you see there on the card. If you check the quotes that he was using, he repeated them almost exactly, and that is what this huge national security apparatus wants to make sure that he says. Not an ad lib.
Are you saying whoever typed out that cheat sheet is really the president? Really making all the decisions?
No, I just think that they want to make sure that he states the policy exactly right, because this weekend he said something about U.S. policy that everybody in the world thought meant let's go get rid of Putin, and it turns out that that is not the U.S. policy, and so they just keep repeating that over and over, but the president's not walking anything back.
Peter, you're there when these things happen. When it comes to the corrections and the walkbacks, are you able to confirm the president is consulted before a walkback happens? I mean, and who is it issuing these corrections?
Well, basically, so when we were in Warsaw the other day, I was in the press filing center when the president said that for the love of God, this man cannot remain in power. And there was a White House official that I reached out to and heard back from almost immediately to say he's not talking about regime change. He's not talking about basically, to summarize, the politics of Russia. He's just talking about his feelings for Vladimir Putin. And so there are, we're not the only ones that catch these things in real time.
Yeah, but I mean, what if he meant it? Then his staff would be contradicting him in real
Or
time.
what if he changed the policy?
Yeah.
On the fly.
And the president does set the policy, but usually just not on the fly. And so if they're going to change it to regime change in Russia, they're probably going to have a meeting about that here first.
Let's call him.
Probably right.
Yeah.
Well, these questions that you're asking him are needed, and everywhere I go, I hear people say, tell Peter Doocy he's doing an excellent job, and you really are, because these are questions we all want to know. It is an important question. It's not silly to ask about chemical weapons.
And credit to President Biden for taking so many of the questions so that we could be clear about exactly what we heard overseas and what it is that he meant.
Yeah.
He set the record straight. You got it wrong, Peter. That's what he said. Sorry.
Thank you, Peter.
Probably wouldn't be the first time.
Well,
right.
Senator Rand Paul said that his gaffes, the president's gaffes, are national security risks. I mean, they are dangerous, and it's humiliating. Who's running the White House? It's just chaotic. Does he even know what his own policies are if someone in the background is walking back everything he says?
It's absolutely unacceptable, and it's very dangerous. When not only do we not know who's calling the shots,
It's not leadership.
but world leaders don't know who's calling the shots, allies and enemies alike. It's not leadership, and that makes everything else feel more precarious because no bold
Particularly
American leader.
because it's at a time of war.
Yes.
And words
Right.
matter. And he said some stuff that really mattered, and they spent the last 72 hours trying to fix it.
Well, no, wait, it didn't matter, Steve. That's what he told your son.
Right.
No, it didn't matter.
It was
never
Peter's interpretation of what he had said.
and everyone else's interpretation. of what
The
he
walk
said.
back to the walk back. We're getting so many mixed messages. We don't know what his policies are. Because one minute he's saying we'll respond in kind, they're saying no, we're walking that back. He's saying no, there are no walkbacks. All right, let's talk about this. A Fox News alert: the mayor of Mariupol is revealing that the city has fallen now into Russian hands.
And we hear that talks between Ukraine and Russia have just wrapped up in the country of Turkey as Ukraine insists it will not give up any territory.
Alex Hogan is live in Lviv with the latest. Alex.
Hi, well, those conversations just wrapped up after about 5 hours today in Turkey. Ukraine has said that it would be willing to talk about neutrality, but it will not discuss giving up any of its territory. Leaders here are saying it's a slippery slope when we talk about chopping up part of a country. Really, where does it end?
We will never accept this. We can speak, we can watch for compromises and solutions, but the price of compromise could not be our territorial integrity. That is absolutely for sure.
Russian troops are clamping down on Mariupol today. Heavy fighting in the last month has decimated this town, and the mayor defeatedly urging all remaining residents there to escape today. That is more than 160,000 people being told to leave their homes behind. Ukrainian advances, however, in two separate parts of the country, with Tyanets near Kharkiv and Irpin near the capital. Last week, Russian forces shifted their focus to the Donbas region, but it was similarly an exit strategy after failed attempts to quickly take over much of the country, or possibly a play of distraction with new attacks overnight on the west, blowing up an oil depot about 75 miles north of Lviv, where we are. Meanwhile, battles to hold on to towns has turned them into rubble after the fighting and destruction, like the footage here from Izium between Kharkiv and Donetsk. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky speaking this morning to the Danish parliament, describing the bloody devastation that has taken place within his country in just this last month. Take a listen.
The total number of means of destruction that the Russian troops have used on our land against our people cannot be calculated, but we can say that the intensity and brutality of hostilities that are being conducted against us have now reached a level that is higher than it was during the Second World War.
saying a level that is higher than what was reached in the Second World War. So we have seen destruction across the country, from military sites to residential buildings and private homes where people have been forced to flee. We're also hearing today from the Ukrainian government that about 60 religious buildings have been destroyed just in this last month. Guys, back to you.
It's terrible. All right, Alex, thank you very much for that. Her headline was that they have wrapped up the talks in Turkey between Ukraine and Russia. We're learning over the last 24 hours that apparently one of the Russian oligarchs, Roman Abramov.
Abramovich.
Is that what it is?
I believe so, because I know an Abramovich here in the city.
Well, they could be related. Apparently, he was asked by the Ukrainians to be part of the negotiating team. And apparently, when they all got together to negotiate the peace talks earlier in the month of March, apparently they suspected they were poisoned. And the symptoms were consistent with chemical weapons poisoning. Red eyes, painful tearing, peeling skin on their hands and faces. And so the big question was, if it was chemical, who would have done that? And there was some suggestion that it could have been a third party to make one of the parties look bad. But now a U.S. official says that U.S. intel suggests the cause was environmental. So in other words, don't worry, it's not chemicals at this point.
Well,
it's just the environment.
People did ask him about that because he was very vocal at the beginning of the invasion, and he was vocal against Russia. And the reporters were saying, are you not worried about the backlash from Putin if you're a billionaire and you're in America but you're speaking out against Russia? And he said, there are too many of us now. There are too many of us that are going against Putin. So he didn't appear worried, but now he's saying he wasn't poisoned, it was environmental.
Well, and he was there today at the negotiation.
Also, an interesting point you talked about in an earlier hour, Steve, is that Ukrainian intelligence has released a list of 600 Russian agents undercover in Europe, releasing their names and their phone numbers and their passport numbers, basically outing Russian agents on the European continent. Either you've got someone inside the Kremlin giving that up, or you've got very good espionage services with Ukraine, maybe with U.S. assistance. Who knows?
Yep, they're fighting back.
Well, the Ukrainians did retake the city of, do you pronounce it Irpin? Irpin, Irpin, and the U.S. believes the Ukrainians have also retaken the town of Trotsianets, which is in the east. So that's two good points. Also, the Ukrainians have actually shot down 8 Russian planes, 4 UAVs, drones, 3 helicopters, 2 missiles, and destroyed Russian armored vehicles.
All right, more on the war in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about America's second city, as it is known. We know that a couple of years ago, Lori Lightfoot was completely behind defund the police. She was suggesting that they slash the police budget by $80 million in 2020. And not long ago, she begged Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, to send in ATF agents because the murder rate was at a 20 or 25-year high. So there she is in the midst of this crime-ridden city. They need every cop they possibly can get to be outside patrolling to keep people safe, and yet today we're learning a shocking detail that about 100 of them are off the beat and they are taking care of her.
It's incredible. So the Chicago Sun-Times reporting that she already has 20 bodyguards, assigned to her as the mayor. We're now learning
that seems like a lot.
That seems like a lot as well. Now we're learning that 65 police officers, I believe 5 sergeants, and a lieutenant. An entire unit of the Chicago PD is also exclusively assigned to her protection.
So 20 plus 70, 90.
90 law enforcement officers in Chicago to guard Lori Lightfoot, as 660 Chicago police officers have retired in 2021 alone. And the crime rate, as you pointed out, Steve, spiking. I don't know how, in her mind, you can justify that. I mean, it's just a
secret until today.
It's another example of rules for thee and not for me. You're not getting police. I'm defunding your police in your community. And Chicago, we see murders every Monday morning. We come in and we get the list of how many people were murdered in different cities. In Chicago, the numbers are always staggering. Yet she's going to surround herself with bodyguards. And I'm glad she is. We are pro-police. However, give them to the community too.
For the people out in the community.
Right.
Yeah.
My goodness, you're right, Steve, though. That's the key point. It was always supposed to be secret.
A secret. Meanwhile, I just got an important text message from from Joe Concha, who's coming up next, referring back to what we were talking about earlier about the mountains of New Jersey.
Gosh,
What does that say?
I literally live off a road called High Mountain Road.
That is not a mountain, Joe. That's
Joe.
a road. That's the name of your road.
The name of your road, and how
Because there's
high
a
is
high
the mountain on High
Oh,
Mountain
now are
Road?
you part of the anti-New Jersey mountain
It's
faction?
No, you're coming my direction.
Yeah, right. Y'all have just made such a big deal about this, and it's been going on for weeks.
Because it's hilarious. There's the highest mountain is like 15 feet. Anyway, Joe Concha,
winning
I'm
him
with you.
over.
I'm
Joe
with you. Yeah,
Concha,
right.
who lives off of High Mountain Road.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Wife's name out your mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yes.
It was a G.I. Jane jump.
Will Smith finally apologizing to Chris Rock for the slap at the Oscars, writing on social media, quote, "My behavior was unacceptable, inexcusable. Jokes at my expense are part of my job, but a joke about Jada's medical condition was too much for me to bear, and I reacted emotionally. I would like to publicly apologize to you, Chris." But our next guest says Hollywood's reaction just exposes their own hypocrisy. Fox News contributor and The Hill media opinion columnist who lives off of High Mountain Road, Joe Concha, joins us right now. Joe.
Steve, just got back from a hike. It was exhausting. It was like Mount Everest, but different. All right?
Yeah,
we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Completely different. What do you
know
make
what
of the
I'm talking
fact
about.
that rather than call him up, Will Smith apologized via social media?
Thank you. A few interesting things to unpack here, right? Mr. Rock still has not responded to any of this, right? So he ain't talking. So perhaps the apology is not accepted. And by the way, Will Smith is, he was man enough to smack Chris Rock in front of 15 million people. So maybe if you're going to apologize to the guy, to your point, maybe man up, pick up a phone, even go see him instead of having your PR folks write something for you to share on Instagram, it looks like. It's just so disingenuous at this point. But either way, Chris Rock is coming out of this, Steve, looking good. He's in huge demand. You talked about it before. Tickets for his shows that were $50, they're now 7 times that amount. But in the end, I can't see the Academy taking away Will Smith's Oscar. I mean, how would you like to be the intern who has to go to his house and get that statue back? Hi, Mr. Smith. My dad loved watching you in the 90s.
Right.
Great Independence Day. Hey, we're going to have to take that Oscar back. How do you think that's going to go?
You told one of the producers, you said, it will be interesting to see what the Academy does. Let's say John Voight had assaulted Chris Rock. Is there a person on this planet who doesn't think his Oscar would not have been stripped already?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, if this were, say, a Trump-supporting white actor that hit Chris Rock so openly in public, I have a feeling the Academy would have probably acted by now and done something. But either way, I think Will Cain brought up the point before, and he's correct, that you probably ban him from attending the award show next year, but you can't take away the statue for his performance in that great movie about the Williams sisters. So I think that's what we do. But meanwhile, Steve, you have Howard Stern, you have one CNN analyst, and Steve Schmidt, formerly of the Lincoln Project, blaming Donald Trump for Will Smith's actions, because you knew at some point that Trump was going to be worked in here somehow. But either way, you look at the numbers, 15.4 million viewers for this show. You say, hey, that's pretty good. But until you consider that 8 years ago they had 43 million people watching. So 30 million viewers are gone because the escapism is gone, because this thing has just gone so political at this point that many people are just predisposed to say, I'm not watching it because I don't want to be lectured to.
Well, think about it this way. If Chris Rock were to file a police report, there are 15.36 million witnesses who could essentially say, this is what I saw. Hey, also, Tim Allen from Home Improvement and his TV shows, he said this: it's not okay to come up on stage and hit a dude because you don't like the humor. It's not okay at a comedy club, concert hall, or hosting some cheeseball award show. Chris Rock is a stand-up comedian and a stand-up guy who carried on. I think I would have run. See, that's the worry now. Who's going to, is there a possibility somebody's going to be at a comedy club or something else, didn't like the joke, and is going to take matters into their own hands?
So on the night that I was engaged, Steve, I brought my wife, Jean, who you know, to the Comedy Cellar, downtown New York City. And if you've ever been to that place, and Dave Chappelle actually surprised everybody and performed that night, but you could walk up, literally, it is a 2-foot walk up onto the stage. There's no security there to stop you. And if somebody doesn't like a joke, that's the worry now. That's like, okay, not only am I going to be offended and walk out, I'm going to walk forward instead and hit the comedian. And that's the point that we're at right now. So hopefully this didn't set some sort of precedent where people are attacking comedians. But I think one of the comedy clubs in New York has already said, don't bother coming if you can't take a joke. Amen. I think that's a good policy.
No kidding. Joe Concha, who not only works for us, he also works for The Hill, not the mountain, as Pete Hegseth said in my ear. Oh, he's got skis.
Going skiing, by the way, right after this, a place called Class Action Park, Vernon Valley, up north, Mountain Creek, New Jersey mountains, the most challenging you'll see anywhere outside of, like, Eastern Europe, believe me.
We have been there many times as a Ducey family, and it is technically a mountain, though only about 1,500 feet. All right. Joe, thank you very much.
Bye.
See you next time. All right, up next on our telecast, more serious news. As Russia wages war in Ukraine, schools there have not been in session, but that is changing with remote learning. Our next guest is teaching students in Ukraine and joins us live. Coming up next.
Chilling new video shows more large groups of migrants being released in droves as the crisis at the southern border continues. The border agents in Del Rio say that they have encountered more than 2,500 migrants just this weekend. Bill Malugin joins us live from the border with the latest. Good morning, Bill.
Ainsley, good morning to you. That's exactly right. The Del Rio sector where we are right now has just been absolutely inundated in recent weeks. Their numbers year over year are up more than 200%. Several Border Patrol stations are now well over capacity, and as a result, the federal government has now been mass releasing migrants into local communities to take off some of that pressure. Why is that happening? Take a look at this drone video shot right here in Eagle Pass yesterday. Eagle Pass has been getting hammered particularly hard. What you're looking at here is video of dozens of migrants crossing illegally into Texas by just wading across the Rio Grande, some of them walking across, some of them using a raft. You'll see there's not much resistance on the U.S. shoreline. This was ultimately a group of about 50 or so who crossed illegally into Eagle Pass, but these big groups are happening day in and day out here in Eagle Pass, and some really big groups in particular. If we can pull up this photo right here, we'll show you one of them. This was a single group of 187 illegal immigrants encountered here on Sunday. It was mostly made up of Cubans and Nicaraguans. Border Patrol taking all of them into custody, but they've been getting these big groups day in and day out, particularly here in the Eagle Pass sector, and that's putting a lot of pressure on Border Patrol facilities, so they're mass releasing migrants. Take a look at this video also from Eagle Pass, Texas. This video shared by Representative Tony Gonzalez's office. What you're looking at here is a mass release of approximately 300 illegal immigrants at an NGO right here in Eagle Pass. This NGO has been getting anywhere from 400 to 600 releases every single day, and what you're seeing is a lot of single adults, not as many families, just mass releases of these single adults, and these releases are happening in small little cities all over Del Rio sector, here in Eagle Pass, over in Del Rio, Carrizo Springs, and Uvalde. We caught up with the mayor of Uvalde yesterday, and he is not happy about what's going on. Take a listen.
We're not equipped to handle these people. I get paid $50 a month to be mayor. The last thing I would need to be handling is an immigration issue that the federal government should be handling instead of dumping it on communities like ours.
And guys, recently DHS just announced that they are going to start having all migrants get vaccinated for COVID-19 while they are in federal custody. And that begs the question, why now all of a sudden? The federal government has already released many hundreds of thousands of these migrants into the U.S. without vaccinations before. So why are they starting to do this now? Could it possibly be because we are hearing on our end that Title 42 could be dropping within a matter of days? We'll find out. I'll send it back to you.
Bill, thank you so much. As their lives are torn apart by war, students in Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv are taking a step toward normalcy as school is starting remote learning. The city of Kyiv saying the goal of remote study during wartime is not just to impart knowledge to students, but also to provide a form of psychological support and an opportunity to converse, adding there won't be any bad grades or homework. Our next guest is a teacher at the British International School in Ukraine. His name is Paul Hodgson, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Paul.
Morning, how are
Good
you?
morning, doing well, thank you. Our prayers are with you and with all the Ukrainians. I know you were at the school in Kyiv, you evacuated on a school bus, you took the school bus back to help evacuate some of the students and some of your loved ones there, which was wonderful. Where are you now?
I'm in Lviv at the moment. We've managed to get here. We've got a place to stay for about a month now.
Okay, and you are setting up virtual school systems for all the children. Why is that so important to you?
Well, for us, we haven't stopped working, so we've gone straight into a virtual system, more or less in school, was close to students and staff, so we've continued to deliver education all the way through, so there's been no interruption to what we've done. We've just done it on a different platform.
How many students attend the British International School in Kyiv?
There's about 700 students we have.
Oh wow, so that's a lot. So how do you find them? Many of them have evacuated. They're in different parts of the region. How do you get in touch with them, give them tablets, and make sure they have internet?
Well, a lot of the students will have, the Ukrainian students will be in different parts of the world. A lot of the international students probably gone home to domicile countries. Basically, we use Teams as our platform, so obviously there's a lot of different time zones to factor in, but we deliver lessons pretty much the same as we did before, so we have a timetable. The teachers obviously are working to deliver that as best as they can from wherever they are. It does come with certain challenges that way, because obviously, some students are still moving around, some are relocating, as are members of staff as well. So we have to be flexible with that, but the important thing is to keep the wheels running.
I know you say it's strange to be working during the war, but you have a lot of practice with this virtual learning because of COVID. How are the children reacting?
Well, I think the children are enjoying being able to touch base with students, their colleagues, and the members of staff as well. It provides that level of consistency and support, where in a world that's very uncertain at the moment, I think you need that. That's very important. We're educators and we impart the education and the knowledge, but equally important is the pastoral support that we give. So it's very important that we continue to do that as best as we can.
Well, they're very fortunate to have you taking the lead on this so that these children aren't punished and are not forgotten. Paul, thank you.
No problem. Bye-bye.
The Supreme Court facing historic changes as the Senate votes on whether to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson next week. Fox News anchor and chief legal correspondent